Another Nintendo Direct is in the books. You've no doubt seen and or heard of everything that showed up in this year's Not E3 Anymore presentation. We got official reveals of several new games, more news on stuff we'd somehow heard nothing about for months. That means you, Fire Emblem. And we now have an actual idea of what the Switch 2's release schedule looks like for the rest of the year, so you can finally plan out what to get when. But you know, there's something else these Direct announcements always make me wonder. What could these characters be like in Smash Brothers? Look, I've been playing Smash longer than some of you watching have been alive. I can't help it. And I promise, I'm not trying to be that one crazed fan we all know who spins everything into proof that one character or another is or isn't getting into a Smash game that hasn't been officially confirmed yet. That's not what I want to do here. What I want to do is talk about the potential we saw here, what we learned about the new and returning characters who appeared in the Direct, and how they might work as fighters in the next Smash Bros. Moveset potential, unique mechanics, adjustments to returning characters, that stuff. So let's have a little fun here and indulge our curiosity. What might this Nintendo Direct have shown us about the future of Smash? First, we have something that wasn't a jaw-dropper or even a new announcement, but it is an imminent revival of a series that missed the boat in Ultimate. Rhythm Heaven Groove is coming up fast, or maybe it's already out by the time you're watching this. And Smash fans have had an eye on this series ever since the rumors it had back in Smash 4. Rhythm Heaven's different than most Nintendo franchises because it doesn't have one single obvious frontrunner to be their first rep. Smash fans focus a lot on the Chorus Kids, again because of the Smash 4 rumors, but this is one case where we're better off keeping our options open. There are multiple characters who more or less share the mascot role, and most of them are MIA in Groove so far. But with 80 minigames confirmed to be in, most if not all are probably there. Right? But if any of them did get in, how could their moveset work? Well, a new mode revealed in the Direct might give us the best idea yet of how Smash could adapt the series' gameplay. You know how the player character in Beat Spell has an internal sense of rhythm and can cast different magic spells based on what buttons you press when? I could see a Rhythm Heaven newcomer having multiple attacks with optional second or third hits you can pull off by pressing A and or B with good timing. And before you say it, no, I don't think basing it on the tempo of the background music is a good idea. Not only would it make the character's viability depend on how fast the music was, anyone trying to play with the volume off would be screwed. Better to make it a consistent tempo you could pick up on by playing the character for a while and watching their idle animations. Next, let's touch on a game that's already out, but got news about some updates and DLC. Pokemon Pokopia has ended up a sleeper hit for the Switch 2. Turns out a Pokemon-flavored builder/life sim game has some wide appeal and surprisingly dark lore, even if I'm not that into the genre myself. I've been seeing people bring up the Ditto you play as in the game as a potential Smash fighter, and I can see the logic, with some caveats. We have a character here whose whole thing is being able to transform, and this particular Ditto uses that in ways we haven't seen from the species before, morphing individual body parts or growing new ones to perform different moves. Can sprout vines to pull a tuft of grass out of the ground, gain a pair of Machoke-like beefy arms to grab and pull heavy objects, or even fully transform into stuff like a Graveler to roll around or a Magnemite to levitate. Those last two are easy side and down specials, respectively. However, not to rain dance on the parade of the growing crowd of Ditto supporters, but there are some roadblocks here that have to be rock smashed through for this one to happen as a newcomer. For one, Pokemon likes pulling characters from recent generations, and I just don't see them passing up on that opportunity in Smash 6. Plus, it kinda sucked to see the new faces get denied a fair chance. We'd likely need Pokemon to get more than one newcomer for Ditto to have a shot, which is very possible and has even happened multiple times before, and Ditto would need to beat out other potential candidates for that second slot. For two, if Smash 6 has been in development for a while, a character from a game releasing in 2026 that was an unexpected hit might have missed the boat, at least until DLC. And for three, Smash has historically avoided spin-off games when it looks for new fighters, other than moveset clones. Could that change next game? Maybe, but it's not certain, which leaves Ditto's chances for Smash unclear. Now for one of the big ones. With its first appearance and first new gameplay since last September, Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave was a highlight of the Direct. And since Smash fans are obsessed with Fire Emblem for not always the healthiest reasons, let's look it over. Fortune's Weave is a successor to Three Houses, taking place elsewhere in the same setting at a different point in time. And just like Three Houses, there are multiple main characters. Kai fights with a lance by default, has talent in mounted combat, riding a giant bird called an Orneus in the gameplay, and can apparently create explosive dark projectiles using a pendant that somehow embedded itself in his hand. Theodora has an army of loyal soldiers she can call on for moves that imitate Three Houses style gambits, and apparently she's so strong that she can pull a boulder out of the ground and hurl it at people. Your move, DK. Dietrich wields a sword that appears to have a mind of its own. Notice it shaking there like it wants to kill that guy, and he's only barely holding it back. And he has shadow-based abilities that include the power to teleport. And the revenge-driven bard, Lita, can use her music to create all kinds of supernatural effects, up to and including summoning a demonic beast. All four characters have at least something interesting going on that contribute to hypothetical Smash movesets. But in an unexpected twist, a fifth character is in the running now. A brief clip of the new trailer, and the box art, revealed that Fortune's Weave appears to have an avatar character. Eshmel, whose name we only know from spotting it in a promo image of the collector's edition, is, well, we don't actually know much about them yet. Just that they have male and female variants like past Fire Emblem avatars, have an obvious angelic motif going on, appear to be working for Sothis, and, notably as far as Smash goes, their signature weapon is also a spear, not a sword. This game has a whole bunch of characters in the mix right now. We won't be able to narrow down who the frontrunners are until it's out in September, so let's wait and see until then. This Direct was a big one if you're into RPGs. Next up is one of the biggest surprises. Turns out Monolith Soft had been so quiet because they're already far along on a new Xenoblade game. Genesis will be the start of a new story arc, and it already stands out by looking much more high fantasy than any previous entry, though knowing these devs, there will be some sci-fi twists later on. We can only gather so much so far from this first trailer, but what's here is very interesting. Introducing our apparent protagonist and future Smash hopeful, who, based on an extra blurb released in Japanese, is named Eleanor. She's attending a prestigious academy to train as a Veseli, a class of warriors who can manipulate anima, an energy that permeates everything in her world. We see a few Veseli in action in the trailer, but the exact nature of Eleanor's powers isn't obvious yet. She nullifies a rival's fireball at one point, and in another scene uses a single slash to cleave both a monster's horn and a rock formation a good 20 feet behind it and off to the side. Seriously, how is that even possible to do in a single attack? Is she able to use anima to bend physical space around her? That could lead to some interesting stuff in a Smash moveset. Also worth mentioning that Eleanor's sword is specifically a rapier. Since those are primarily thrusting weapons, her attack animations could involve a lot of stabbing motions instead of just the broad slashes we normally get from sword fighters in Smash. Either way, it's gonna be a while before this one's out. Genesis is slated for 2027, which means that this game is the most likely of any mentioned in this video to have to wait until Smash 6's DLC. But who knows, the wait might end up worth it. Whew, back-to-back big RPGs can wear you out. How about we unwind a little with this next one? Nintendo Switch Sports got itself a sequel. Following in the footsteps of Wii Sports, it's back to Woohoo Island for a bigger, better collection of motion-controlled sporting events. With one successful game out and another on the way, it raises a question. Could the player characters from these games get into Smash? To their credit, the Sportsmates have a perfect niche available. We've had a few sports-themed moves on fighters before. Wii Fit Trainer especially mixes in a bit of equipment along with their yoga poses, but we haven't had anyone go all in on a moveset built around sports. Imagine a neutral special that rolls a bowling ball along the ground and off platforms at high speed, or a forward smash that swings a tennis racket with the ability to reflect projectiles, or summoning a mini-sized prop plane to recover with. Maybe even a thumb wrestling pummel? That'd probably be too hokey. But there's a problem, one that I'm not sure would affect their Smash 6 chances, but still a problem, that the sportsmates can't seem to shake. Fans just don't like these guys very much, or at least they're seen as inferior replacements for the Miis. Sure, the first Switch sports game sold well, but it didn't stop the sentiment that these guys are just less interesting as player avatars and too sterile for their own good. And from what I've seen, whenever any talk of a sports-themed moveset comes up, it's not about a playable sportsmate, it's for adding a new Mii fighter type, a Mii athlete that calls back to their debut game, usually with Matt as the default design. So, I don't know what to make of these guys. Worth keeping an eye on the sportsmates for Smash 6, but unless they can win over the crowd, they'd be met with a lot of fan resistance. I still can't believe Star Fox revived itself out of nowhere, or that it's redoing the Lylat Wars plot yet again, but that's neither here nor there. The new remake's rolling with a new art style and notable redesigns for the characters, which begs another question. Will these designs carry over to Smash for any of the current trio that come back? Turns out the answer is more complicated than you'd think. Smash has, from Brawl onward, used semi-custom designs for the Star Fox characters. They've been inspired by recent-ish games at the time, but the Smash team works in their own touches. That's harder to do in this case, because the new Star Fox gave almost everyone more animalistic designs with new body structures. And whether they stick to that might depend on whether Nintendo plans on keeping the designs this way, or if they want to keep experimenting with other art styles, like how Fox in the Mario Galaxy movie did not have stubby digitigrade legs. And using the new designs in Smash 6 would require more than a simple model swap. New builds with different body proportions, especially with Falco, would mean the old animations and especially the old hitboxes wouldn't line up the same anymore. They'd have to do extra work to get everything to function right, and Smash typically hasn't overhauled more than a few veterans per game. Basically, this whole situation is interesting, because whatever they do for Smash 6 might telegraph Nintendo's future plans for Star Fox. If they go out of their way to utilize the designs from the new game, we might see those designs, or something similar, stick around for a while. If not, it might mean they plan to keep experimenting. Or maybe Sakurai will get stubborn like he sometimes does, shout out to DDD and Air Riders not using his design from Forgotten Land, and push for a specific version of the characters he thinks works better. If Sakurai even is the one making all those decisions next time, still too early to assume that just yet. Real quick, before we get on with the rest, there's something more I think we can figure out about the nature of whatever the next Smash project is. Not based on what got announced in the Direct, but what did not. Remember back after the Switch 2 presentation in April of last year, once we found out that upgraded Switch 2 editions would be a thing, there was talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate might go that route. With Sakurai directing Kirby Air Riders, what if they just updated Ultimate as a stopgap and waited to make the actual Smash 6 later on? Even I entertained it at first. But that was based on the idea that such a thing could get revealed in 2025, shortly after the Switch 2 launched. The console's been out for a full year now, and we've heard about no such thing. And while development on anything video game related is complicated and takes longer than a lot of people realize, I gotta think an update to Ultimate with one wave of content would be basic enough to have at least been announced by now. What I'm saying is, the fact that we haven't heard about a Switch 2 edition of Ultimate by now makes it very unlikely that one exists. I think the fact that it hasn't happened yet means there's about a 90% chance that the plan is to go straight into Smash 6, which hopefully means it didn't just start development after Kirby Air Riders wrapped up. At least, I don't think Nintendo would be fine letting the Switch 2 go without something as big as its own Smash Bros. Game until 2029 or later. There's one more Switch 2 game that's coming up fast. Splatoon Raiders is the series' first ever spin-off, and it's slated for late July. Most of the potential hang-ups that we saw with Pokopia and Ditto also apply here, being a spin-off that might be too late for the base game. But screw it, let's see what Raiders could offer for Smash. Actually, there are two potential newcomers that might work here. The first is the player character, simply called the Mechanic. While we already have an ink-based weapon user in Smash, this one goes about it very differently. A lot of their weapons and gadgets are handcrafted, so their moveset could feel a lot more improvised and all over the place playstyle-wise. Could have a custom modified splatter shot as their main weapon, but for example, their side special could whip out a splatchet that dashes forward with a strong hit after a delayed startup, or a down special that builds a shot pot turret, and if they can assemble it without getting interrupted, it pelts nearby opponents with shots that deal chip damage and apply ink to them. You can kind of see it, right? Or what if they wanted something wilder instead and made a deeper cut? Literally. What if they crammed all 3 members of Deep Cut into their exploration bot? A super heavy Splatoon fighter would definitely stand out next to the Inklings. Maybe some of their specials could have one member jump out to perform an attack independently, but if they get hit by anything, the damage applies to the whole team. There's a lot of potential here, but we'll have to see if Smash actually gets to use it. Even if not, maybe a deep cut assist trophy or a stage set in the Spiralite Islands could happen. We'll have a better idea once the Splatoon Raiders Direct is aired, which it probably has by the time you're watching this. Before we get to our last section, there was more than just Nintendo news in the Direct. Let's run through some of the third-party announcements that showed up, and some notable Smash hopefuls therein. Hey, Rayman's back in action again, with a weird hybrid remake/revisiting of his most recent game. Not sure what to make of Legends Retold, but at least Ubisoft is attempting to keep him alive, which means they'd at least be open to letting him into Smash 6, theoretically. Devil May Cry 5 got a Switch 2 port announced, which is only going to drive his fans into more of a frenzy once Smash speculation gets going in full again. The ones who aren't just fans of his overpowered Marvel vs. Capcom renditions at least. Will it help him enough amidst the logjam of Capcom characters vying to get in next? Damned if I know. Deltarune Chapter 5 is already out by the time you're watching this, and there's a decent chance you're still picking your jaw up off the floor after whatever happened during it. With how it keeps getting highlighted in directs, I'm just saying, keep a very close eye on it for Smash 6 once every chapter is out. Metaphor also finally got a Switch 2 port confirmed. Sega has a track record with Smash already, as does Atlus in particular, so this game's main character might be a sleeper pick. I couldn't give you exact details yet because I've been avoiding spoilers for this one until I can play it myself. A Tomb Raider port from the reboot saga showed up. Could it help Lara Croft's chances in the long term? I don't know for sure, and honestly, I don't trust her current parent company that much, so I'm taking a rain check on this one. And because a couple friends of mine would give me an earful if I overlooked it, the Japanese version of the Direct revealed a Switch port of an upcoming Toho remaster. Could it help Reimu overcome the odds? Honestly, I have no idea. This series is also beyond my expertise, and shmups are one of my weakest genres. Let's give it a keep an eye on it for now. And finally, let's get to that last announcement that's had everyone talking. A full, modern-day, AAA, high-definition remake of one of the most iconic and beloved video games ever made is coming later this year, and okay, I might or might not be stalling for time, because in an uncharacteristic move for Nintendo, we saw next to nothing of this new version of Ocarina of Time. Usually they're good about showing live gameplay in the first trailer, especially for something that's less than 6 months away. So it's honestly weird that they didn't show anything other than the cutscene of Link having his prophetic nightmare at the very beginning and a fancy narration that might or might not be in the final game. Because of that, we're kind of flying blind here as far as what could happen Smash-wise. But the fact that there is a new version of Ocarina of Time on the way raises questions of how Smash might want to handle the Zelda veterans. Do they revert Link and/or Zelda to match this new remake and call back to their original designs in Smash 64 and Melee? Does Link get his original moveset back from before Brawl? Or do they give one or more of the Zelda veterans their designs from the Wild era? Would it even be right to go all in on Ocarina of Time and take away all references on the roster to a setting that, at this point, is just as important to the series as Ocarina of Time was in the late 90s? I mean, you've definitely seen all the fans who've hoped Ganondorf would get an overhaul based on Tears of the Kingdom with his multiple weapons and decay-inducing gloom magic. Ironic how, in making a game that'll be a system seller for the Switch 2, they've also made the job of the team behind Smash 6, another eventual system seller, a lot more complicated. Place your bets on how they'll try to solve it. And that's just about everything. Turns out that Nintendo Direct had a lot of stuff to mull over in the context of Smash. New games and new information on upcoming games that all added a few brushstrokes to a still forming picture of what these characters might be capable of. And the question of whether a couple remakes might use their character designs to update certain veteran fighters turned out to have more going on than it seemed. What do you think of this one? Up for more of this laid-back, thought-provoking, yet not too serious Smash talk? Maybe I could make a recurring thing out of this whenever the next Direct rolls around. And was there anything big that I overlooked? I never got to the Duskbloods, but that was because that game's trailer also gave us next to nothing new, and I still don't know what to make of it. All will make sense later this year, I suppose. Hey, thanks to the following for helping out with this video. Shout out to my channel supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships for chipping in. And if you're looking for some way to hold your Smash cravings over for at least another 3 months, I have plenty of videos for you to peruse if you haven't seen them already. So, until next time, we keep waiting, I guess.